Hello.
Hello, hello. So just as you guys are signing on, I will run through a few things. Let me introduce myself. I've put my full name in there. I'm Sabrina Nordland. I am the marketing and PR executive at Appointed. I am generally the host of these. Esther's just signed on in case we have any product questions. But you won't be seeing her. The other two panelists we have here are Malk. He's our operations and compliance manager. So he will be telling you a bit about our topic. And Madeline Fish, Maddie, she is our client success manager. So she'll be showing you a bit more of the Appointed side of all of the things we are talking about. So a bit more about our webinars. They're just quite super quick and quite informal. You'll notice it's quite chatty. You don't need to be nervous to put questions in whatsoever. Nothing is a stupid questions that those don't exist at Appointed. We'd rather you get the information. Also, this is being recorded. You can't see anything apart from us. So it's all good. You won't have any of your names or your photos or anything like that. Basically, what you can see is what they can see. And it's just a good way for us to be able to share with you in case you need to jump off for another meeting or something comes up, maybe you get a knock at the door. Just put your questions in and then you will be able to watch it at a later date. I will email it to you either tonight, should the uploading go as planned, or tomorrow morning, if it takes a while to upload to YouTube, which sometimes happens. I will also be popping some things in the chat, but if you have questions, please do try and use the Q&A function. When you're in the Zoom, you will notice it is slightly different to regular Zoom. It is Zoom webinar, which means there's a Q&A function. That just means we can track the questions a little bit better. But for example, I will be sharing with you a link to sign up to our newsletter because that is where we share things like our webinars and our new releases. So today's webinar, I think everybody's online now. Today's webinar is data security best practices in online booking. It was slightly inspired by a new release we have, which we will be talking about today, which is a Saml SSO release. If you were signed up to our newsletter, which I would really appreciate if you did, you would get information like about this release and about the webinar. We don't spam you, we email you once a month, and it's great. So when you see that pop up in the chat, make sure you click it. Now I will pass over to Malk. One last reminder to you all before I pass over to Malk, no stupid questions, use that Q&A function, and we will make sure you leave here well informed. Now, Malk, our operations and compliance manager, take it away.
Thanks, Sabrina, and thanks everyone for joining. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about security at Appointed even. That's a good start, isn't it? We've always been a very security conscious company. You have to be, as soon as you're in the realms of dealing with other people's data, you need to make sure that you are as secure as possible if you expect customers to trust you with that. A couple of years ago, we decided that we wanted to take the sort of next steps, I guess, in shoring up our security and consolidating our approach to that. And we took on the challenge of becoming certified to the ISO 27001 standard. And now, for those of you who haven't heard of that before, it's an internationally recognized information security management system, which is a really posh way of saying it's a bunch of policies and processes that govern the way that a company approaches security and making sure that all the data it holds and all the information it holds is as secure as possible. So those policies and procedures are then audited externally on an annual basis. We also do internal audits of it. And every 3 years, you have to go through a recertification process. So part of that is part of ISO 27001 is that it demands constant improvement. So it's no good just getting certified and sitting on your laurels and thinking, great. But always looking for evidence about how you are trying to improve your processes, how you're moving, how you're changing those processes to work with the business, how you're implementing change to keep getting better and keep focusing on security. Now, we passed our initial certification back in February of 2020. And since then, we've really been using it to sort of drive the business forward. We've passed our 2 external audits that we've had since then, and we'll be going for recertification at the end of this year. So I'm not going to bore you with the finer details of ISO, don't worry. But suffice to say, it's sort of ensured that security is now very much at the heart of what we do at Appointed. For example, all staff undergo information security training within a couple of weeks of them starting at Appointed, and all staff undergo annual refresher training. And we also try and fit in sort of smaller bite-sized chunks of training throughout the year. But essentially, this means that everybody in the company is aware of what's expected of them and understands how fundamental security and risk management are to the company and to our customers. But also, ISO has really helped us shape our roadmap for our product roadmap, and that's really where I wanted to focus a couple of minutes on now. Information security is built on three sort of fundamental cornerstones, and these are the cornerstones that you look at when addressing any risk or anything else. And the first of those is confidentiality, the second is integrity, and the third is availability. It's also known as the CIA triad. So if we think about those, I'm going to talk about them in reverse order. Availability, we need to make sure that the information can be accessed. So in terms of what that is for our product, we need to make sure that our systems are available to customers all the time. Our infrastructure, therefore, is built in such a way that it's very elastic, expands to demand. And we also have an accredited third party that carries out vulnerability and penetration testing. So making sure that those systems are always available. And we've had no downtime in the last 3 years, as it happens. Well, I think even longer. So that's something that we're really, really proud of. Integrity is also really important. So that's knowing that your data is accurate. Now, we can't really influence the integrity of your data as such, but what we do is we provide you with an activity log where you can go in and see all the changes that have happened to any piece of data within the Appointed app. So you can see when a user is logged in, you can see when an appointment has been changed and who changed it. Was it the customer, your end user that did it or not? So really, it gives you that ability to focus on the integrity of your data. But really, I wanted to talk about the sort of confidentiality side most, because that's really the most customer-facing part and the most customer-facing part of the app. ISO is really, really strong on access control. Knowing who in your organization has access to what is really, really important, particularly if that person is to leave the company. So a lot of our focus goes on the way that we enable that you as customers or potential customers to govern who has access to the system and how they have access to that system. For example, I can look by looking at our access register, I can tell which of our systems our employees have access to at any one time. So if that employee leaves the company, we can restrict that access straight away. It's obviously really important. We also approach access control on and giving access to systems on the basis of what we call least privilege, which means if you don't need it, you don't get access to it. Means that the marketing team can't get into any of our developer tools, and vice versa. So it just reduces risk on that front as well. But we try and implement this on the Appointed app. So we have multiple user levels within the app. Administrators have full access to the system, and they can add and remove users as required. That means that when somebody leaves, the administrator can go in, they can remove their access, they no longer have access to your end user data, they no longer have access to anything like that. A standard user has full access to the Appointed features, but they can't touch any of the user accounts. So they can't add people, they can't remove people. So again, you give them the tools they need to do the job, but you remove the tool that they don't need access to. And then finally, we have a restricted users, where a restricted user is somebody who's maybe just dealing with day-to-day stuff with appointments and everything else. They can be restricted to only have access to those particular resources or calendars that they are working on. Again, minimizing the access they have to stuff that they don't need, and improving your security on that front. We've also sort of really improved our security on the way that people can log in. We've introduced multi-factor authentication, and users can choose to switch that on. Multi-factor authentication is based on the premise of something that you know and something that you have. So something that you know would be your password, and something that you have would be a token that is on an Authenticator app on your phone or something similar. And it means it's just that much harder for bad actors to gain access to things. They might have cracked your password, but they'll not have your phone, or they might have your phone, but they don't have your password. And then we've added some single sign-on options as well. So initially we kicked that off with allowing users to log in using their Google account or their Facebook account, and using the security set up from those. But more recently, and most importantly, in our view at the moment, is a recently released single sign-on for Saml 2.0. Now, Saml is just a markup language, but that essentially allows users of systems like Microsoft Azure. Larger companies use that to have their identity management from, and we can now allow users to log on using that, and that gives administrators within our customers' environments far more control over who has access, when it's removed, and so on. So that's something that we're really proud of, and we're just continuing to develop that. At the moment, it's Microsoft Azure, but we will be bringing other systems on in the future. And then lastly, we've talked about logging in and now about logging out. We also have a feature within the Appointed app which allows administrators to set the timeout session length. That means you can set it as little as 15 minutes, or you can set it up to 24 hours. And that means when there's any amount of inactivity, users are automatically logged out. Again, it's all about protecting who can see your information as a customer, and we're doing our best to improve that every day. So anyway, I hope that's been a short but useful overview. I'm going to hand you over to Maddie now, who's going to show you the single sign-on Saml process in action.
See, in action. Thanks, Malcolm. Yes, so really just putting what Malcolm said and just visualizing it actually into the Appointed product and what it will look like when you log in. So I'll share my screen. I'm doing the desktop here. You might see, hopefully everyone sees that all right. Cool, I can see Sabrina nodding there. Thank you. Fab. So this is when you log in, this is our Appointed Webinars account. When you log in, everyone will see something that looks, like this, the same sort of tabs, although your screen here, calendar, might look slightly different. So I'm just going to really quickly go through just our standard, as Malcolm was saying, that we have our 3 user levels, just where you can do that and where you can edit that. And then I'll go into the Saml 2.0 and how you can enable our brand new feature. So under the Setup tab on the right here, you just go to Manage Users and Permissions. So at the moment, even if you have one account or hundreds of accounts, you will have access to it like this. So you've got admin, standard, restricted. These are employees of ours are here. So to edit it, you can just click on the little pencil icon and there. So as Malcolm said, you have these different levels. So admin, standard, or restricted. Now only admins can actually change these levels. So obviously restricted can't be able to see this at all. So that's the level in there. However, we do have those other authentication methods, such as the multi-factor authentication and the social sign-on that Malcolm was referring to. That isn't actually under setup user permissions, as you can see. It's actually under the top right person icon. We call it a profile icon, really. So it says A here for Appointed Webinars. Yours probably have a different letter there, or it could have an image. So if you highlight, hover over that, you'll see here we have edit login details. We also have the activity log that Malcolm was referring to there for extra security. So if you click onto edit login details, you can see here it will show you your details, the account that you've logged into there. But you'll see at the bottom we will have now additional authentication methods. This isn't our newest feature, but it's relatively new. So if you haven't enabled it, I would recommend. So here we've got, you can see I've already got connected Google and enabled the MFA. So the social sign-ons here are Google or Facebook, which is a really popular way actually to sign on now. Pretty much any platform that you sort of sign up to or log in with, it will sort of ask if you want to use your Google social. So these are actually connect or disconnect. So there's a sort of different wording. The MFA is enable or disable. So you can just hit connect onto that and go through the steps. I do actually have a couple of videos just to show you on with that. Actually, we'll just disconnect it in here. I'll show you the MFA. So with it here, I'll just sort of disconnect it just to show you. So you can always disconnect it if you no longer need it, but you'd hit on connect and it will pop open with the account that you want. I've already actually connected with it here. So you see it just loads like that and it goes straight away. You've successfully connected your Google account. So I mean, it's dead easy. It takes literally 2 seconds. So feel free to do that with Facebook if you prefer. And then we have the MFAs. It's the same thing. You click on enable with that. I do have, and as Malcolm was saying, the only difference there is it has that secondary nature of you'll know your password, but you'll get the code as well. Now with that, you can use any Authenticator app. So if you go on the App Store or, Apple Play, whatever, Google Play, sorry, you can download an Authenticator app. I use Google Authenticator, doesn't mean that's the one you have to use. There are others out there. So just really quickly, I'll show you this. Just gives you a bit of an idea. So you can see there, this is email and password, and I can just log in. That's just a standard, email password. But with the MFA enabled on that, you will get a verification code on your phone that you'll have to put in there. So once you type it in, you hit confirm, and that will take you into the accounts. If you do just have one account, it will just take you straight in. As you can see, I have what we would call a hallway of accounts. Lots of sort of random ones there. You might have, 100 different, stores, for example, and it will show you that. With the, I do actually have the QR code, which maybe I should have shown you there first, but once you have enabled it, this is what, if I pause that, it will show the QR code here. So this is what you would get on the Authenticator app. Scan it, it will give you a fresh verification code. So you just put it in. And then once you hit submit, for some reason, I'm never putting it in. Yes, there you go. Put it in, submit, and then it will enable. So again, that was 2 seconds. It's dead easy, and it does add that extra layer of protection. So I do highly recommend. But here, obviously, we're here to talk about brand new, the Saml 2.0 protocol. So as Malcolm was saying, our documentation really, we have focused probably mainly on MS Azure, but that doesn't mean that is necessarily the only one. If it's Saml 2.0, it's fine. But hopefully, as we get more feedback from you guys, hopefully from all our clients, we can build more documentation on other Active Directories that you might use. Again, it's under the profile icon, but it's not an edit login details. The other section here it has its own important section, manage SSO. So as you can see there, configure and manage single sign-on for your organization. So if you click into there, we can see what that looks like. So when you get into it, Saml SSO has a bit of information about it here, and it will say disabled on the top right if you haven't yet turned it on. We do have, if you click here, learn more about the single sign-on here. I would click onto it. We do have various steps I would recommend going through. I am going to show you just that how to do it anyway, but while you're doing it, I'll just have that as an aside. There are in total around 7 steps, which makes it sound like it's such a task of doing it, but it's not. It's really dead easy. But the final, I'll move up, but the final sort of 6 and 7 steps are ones that we just sort of, I will highlight a little bit more, recommend later on. But so once you get to this stage, we need to upload the metadata file and what that's really doing. So if you go into your Active Directory, MS Azure, in this sort of case that we're using, you can get that metadata file and upload it into here. And it's just allowing the permissions for us to sort of interact essentially. And then you have your different URLs here. So reply URL, entity ID, sign on URL. It has a little information actually, and also does nicely outline in the guide what these actually do. But the crux of it is just to copy this and paste it in, and just make sure you're matching the field. So you don't copy this into reply URL, just make sure that goes into that field. And all these fields will be clearly outlined in MS Azure, in the Active Directory that you're using. And then once you've done that, hit save. I do actually also have, just because it's not enabled here, but I did put together, this is I'm just going to put that down there. Actually, you can see there's a sort of screenshot here. It'll say enabled, so it'll look a little different. And you'll be able to customize user permissions, and you can edit your SSO configuration there, so you can change it if you need to. But the customized user permissions, so the next step after that is actually adding these users in. And as we were saying earlier about your admin standard and restricted, so there's not any the type of users, it's just the same. So you can add them into this account. That email address in your Active Directory, you'll probably have the group that you are adding in. So sort of Malcolm was actually saying about how, like, marketing might have access to developers. You can create a group in MS Azure and say, right, everyone in this can access the appointed account. And it will become clear once you're, when you're in your Active Directory, you'll be able to see that. So then you can add them into here. So if Maddie at appointed.com was being added into here, when I log in as Maddie at appointed.com, I will have access, to those accounts. And that is the six that I was saying earlier about the sort of step 6 or 7 of it. And this is actually something that I missed. The step 6, so once you've done that, this is all fine. You've got it enabled. You have all the users added into here. But you do need to just sort of do the same inside the Active Directory, which is called the attributes and claims. One of my colleagues actually did kind of send me an image of this as well. So you can see it will sort of look like this in your Active Directory there. So you'll claim that you've got your email, and then you'll add the user here. So that's the kind of final step that can be quite easily missed, I would say, because once it says enabled and you've added the users, you think it's all great, but just that final little bit, which I think is step 6 of the guide. So do just look at that. We have also linked in there. There's a really helpful URL that takes you to a support guide for MS Azure of just, how you can do that in a little more detail. But yeah, that's what you'll do there, and then you're good to go. What we're saying about the final step of that is what we would recommend is, I'll just make this a bigger screen again, is just it obviously needs to tell your staff that you've done this. What I would say about the way we've set it up is, if you went right now after this webinar and set it up, it's not going to log all your staff members out. So don't worry about that. What it will do is it will enable it all. And then we do recommend sort of sending out a mass email to those who are using the appointed platform to just say, we've enabled the Saml SSO. If you log out of appointed, next time you log in, if you can use the login via SSO. And if I just really quickly show you, just to recap on that, you can see there, you've got login with Facebook, login with Google, which of course you can use. You can enable the MFA, but then we have login with SSO. And by clicking onto that, that will take you in. And moving forward, that will be the way to do it, basically. So don't worry that it's going to push people out. If you do it right now, it won't do that. It just means the next time they log in, it will be SSO, the Saml SSO moving forward. The only really key thing is just to say, the person who does this, enables this, just make sure the organization they have authority to do so. They have also then admin across all the accounts. If you have 100 stores, for example, or 100 accounts, just make sure you are admin across all, and then you can go into one and enable it. Just make sure you're not that you have access to that. And sort of when Malcolm's saying about, when a staff member moves at appointed, it's important, Malcolm, to sort of remove us access to all the other accounts, all the other platforms that we would have access to working inside appointed. And the same occurs outside. So if you're to connect SSO here with appointed, just remember, if you were to leave the business, or that person was to leave the business who connects it, just make sure it's correctly transferred over so they have authority to manage it as well. I think that's everything I wanted to show. Hopefully it all makes sense. Happy to answer any questions. I'll go back to Sabrina if you want to. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you very much, Maddie. We do have a few questions. I believe the first one that came up as well while we were talking about this, and it says, if I, as an admin, remove a user, what will happen to them?
If I, as an admin, remove a user, what will happen? Oh yeah, can I answer that? Sorry, I saw a little ping there. So if you remove an admin user, what it means is they won't be able to, they just won't have access to the account. So what I would say, if you want to log in and go through and just check, has anyone left the company, and do remove them. I would use it probably part of a process. If someone does leave, if they have access to the appointed platform, just go in and remove them. Because if it is left there, they can gain access to the system. It won't if they leave. But with the SSO, what you can do is you can remove them from the appointed group, pointers saying here, and that will take them out, so they won't be able to access it anymore. So as I say, need to remove from both appointed and the Active Directory. Because you just won't want them. You don't want their email and password, their email address and name in there at all into the system. So you'll need to remove them both. but from doing that, they won't log in. If you am I okay to read these answers? Okay, I don't want to take your role there. If you already have users added into appointed, and then you add them by SSO, will you need to delete their account first before adding them, or would it override? And you already add them to SSO. Yes, if you have users into the appointed system and then you add them via SSO, you don't need to delete their account once they've logged out. Once they log in the next time, it does override. They will have to log in via the login via SSO moving forward from that point onwards. Okay. But I think what Esther was saying, if you do want to delete them, you still need to delete from both. But it will override once you've. That's why it won't push them out as well. Once you've switched over to SSO, it won't push them out. They just need to next time log in via SSO, and it will override.
Makes sense. Right, that is the last of our questions. If there are any stragglers, I'm about to wrap up, so you might as well pop them in there really quickly. First and foremost, thank you, Maddie and Malk, for participating. It is not always easy to get panelists, but you guys did a good job. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you to all of our participants for attending. I hope to see you at the next one. I will be announcing the next one via newsletter. So click that link. I will also be posting about it everywhere. You will be hearing about it. We do them about every 6 weeks. As I said about 20 minutes ago, it's really short, really informal. Next one will be all about accessibility. We'll be partnering with the St. James Quarter in Edinburgh, as well as Welcome, an accessibility platform. So definitely one to attend. Thank you all for your thank yous in the chat, and I hope to see you at the next one.
Great.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Saml.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.